The knock came before the sky changed color. It was slow and careful, as if the night itself was asking permission to end. In a small house near the quiet edge of town, a little girl named Lily opened her eyes. She was 9 years old and slept on a thin mattress beside her grandmother. The room smelled of old wood and warm blankets, and the silence felt heavier than usual. The knock came again. Lily sat up and listened with her breath held tight. Her grandmother did not move, and her breathing stayed slow and deep. Lily knew the sound was real because her heart began to beat faster. She slid out of bed and walked down the narrow hallway. Each step felt louder than it should have been. The clock on the wall showed 5 in the morning. Outside the windows the streetlights still glowed and the world felt paused. When Lily reached the front door she stopped. She placed her hand on the wood and felt the cold pass into her fingers. The knock came once more, softer this time. Lily whispered, asking who was there. No voice answered. Instead she heard a light tap again, like someone knocking with care. She turned the lock slowly and opened the door just enough to see outside. A large police dog sat on the porch. His fur was dark and slightly wet from the morning air. A badge hung from his collar, and his posture was straight like he had been trained for years. There was no officer with him, and the street behind him was empty. Lily opened the door wider. She looked up and down the street, but saw no one. The dog did not bark or move suddenly. He only looked at her with eyes that seemed tired and patient. Lily had seen police dogs before at school events. They were always strong and loud and proud. This one felt different. He felt quiet, like he was carrying something heavy inside him. The dog lifted his paw and tapped the door again gently. It felt like he was knocking not because he was trained, but because he wanted to be understood. Lily knelt down slowly and spoke in a soft voice. She asked if he was lost. The dog did not answer, of course. Instead he turned his head toward the street and then looked back at Lily. He stood up and took a few steps away. Then he stopped and looked back again, waiting. Lily felt fear and concern mixed together in her chest. She knew she should wake her grandmother. She knew she should stay inside. But the dog waited, as if time itself had stopped for him. She went back inside quietly and pulled on her sweater. She slipped on her shoes and took a deep breath. Before leaving she looked back at her grandmother, who still slept peacefully. Lily closed the door softly behind her. The air outside was cold and sharp. The street was empty and the lamps hummed quietly above them. The dog walked slowly, making sure Lily stayed close. He did not pull or rush, and his steps felt careful and tired. They walked past houses that were still asleep. Windows were dark and curtains stayed closed. The world felt like it belonged only to them at that moment. Lily hugged her sweater tighter around her arms. As they walked, Lily noticed the dog would stop often. He would look back at her to be sure she was still there. Each time she nodded, even though he did not need it. Something inside her told her he was afraid of being alone. They reached the road that led toward the old police station. It was no longer in use and had been quiet for years. Tall trees lined the path and the wind whispered through their leaves. Lily felt a strange sadness growing in her chest. The dog slowed his pace even more. His ears drooped slightly and his tail stayed low. Lily realized he was not leading her to a place. He was leading her to a moment. She remembered seeing police cars at her house before. Not often, but enough to remember the serious faces. Her parents had been gone for a long time and questions were never answered clearly. She pushed the thought away, but it stayed close. The dog stopped near a bench by the road. He sat down slowly and looked up at Lily. His eyes reflected the street light above them. They were full of loyalty and waiting and something close to pain. Lily sat beside him. She did not know why, but it felt right. The cold bench pressed against her legs. The dog leaned slightly toward her as if drawing strength. A police whistle sounded faintly in the distance. The dog lifted his head but did not move. Lily followed his gaze toward the sound. Her heart began to pound. She understood then that this dog was not lost. He had come to her for a reason. A reason tied to duty and memory and love. Something had happened, and he did not know who else to trust. The sky began to lighten slowly. Morning was coming whether anyone was ready or not. Lily stayed beside the dog holding her hands together. Whatever the reason was, she knew her life was about to change. The whistle grew louder as the light in the sky slowly changed. Lily stood up from the bench and looked down the empty road. The police dog stayed seated, but his body became tense. His ears lifted, and his eyes focused forward, as if he recognized the sound. 2 officers appeared from the far end of the road, walking quickly. Their steps were calm but serious. One was tall, and the other was shorter with gray hair. Both stopped when they saw Lily standing beside the dog. The shorter officer spoke first and asked her name. Lily answered softly and held her hands together. She felt small standing between the uniformed men and the quiet dog. The tall officer looked at the dog, and his face changed. He knelt down and placed a hand on the dog's head. His voice became gentle as he called the dog by name. The dog did not wag his tail but leaned slightly into the touch. It was clear they knew each other well. The officers looked at Lily with surprise and concern. They asked how she came to be there so early. Lily explained slowly about the knocking and the walk. She told them the dog came alone and waited for her. The gray-haired officer took a deep breath. He looked away for a moment and then back at Lily. He said the dog had never done something like this before. He said the dog was known for loyalty and calm behavior. The tall officer explained that the dog worked with a kind officer named Mark. Mark had been a quiet man who loved his job deeply. He had lived alone and treated the dog like family. The dog had followed Mark everywhere for many years. Lily listened carefully and felt her chest tighten. The name sounded familiar in a way she could not explain. She remembered seeing a man with a kind smile years ago. He had once helped her carry groceries home with her grandmother. The officers asked Lily to sit down again. They spoke softly so she would not feel afraid. They explained that something unexpected had happened during the night. Mark had not returned home after his late shift. The dog had waited for hours by the station door. When no one came, the dog had left on his own. He had followed a path he knew well. That path led him straight to Lily's house. The officers said the dog had visited her home before with Mark. They said Mark often spoke about Lily and her grandmother. He said the house felt warm and peaceful. He said it reminded him of better times. Lily felt her eyes fill, but she did not cry. She looked at the dog and reached out her hand. The dog rested his head gently against her leg. It felt like he had been waiting for her touch. The gray-haired officer said the dog trusted Lily deeply. He said, "Animals sometimes feel things people cannot explain." He said the dog may have known Lily needed to know. He said the dog chose her for a reason. They all stood in silence for a moment. The sky continued to brighten and birds began to sing. Morning sounds slowly returned to the world. But the moment still felt heavy. The officers asked Lily if she could walk back with them. They said her grandmother would be worried. Lily nodded and took a step forward. The dog stood and stayed close to her side. As they walked, Lily asked a quiet question. She asked if Mark was coming back. The officers looked at each other before answering. They said Mark was a brave man who did his duty. They said sometimes brave people leave behind quiet heroes. They looked down at the dog as they spoke. The dog kept walking with steady steps. He did not pull away or rush ahead. When they reached Lily's house, her grandmother stood outside. Her face showed fear and relief at the same time. She rushed forward and held Lily tightly. Lily hugged her back and felt safe again. The officers explained everything gently. They spoke with respect and care. They promised to answer questions when the time was right. They thanked Lily for her courage. Before leaving, the tall officer knelt beside Lily. He said the dog might need her help again. He said healing takes time for everyone. He asked if Lily would visit the station sometimes. Lily looked at the dog and then nodded. She said she would come whenever she could. The dog lifted his head and looked at her. For the first time his tail moved slightly. As the officers walked away, the dog stayed behind. He sat on the porch beside Lily and her grandmother. He looked at the door and then at Lily. It felt like he was asking a question without words. Lily understood what he needed. She sat beside him and rested her hand on his back. She whispered that he was not alone. The dog stayed still and calm. Inside the house the morning light filled the rooms. The clock ticked loudly, now breaking the silence. Life was moving forward again. But something had changed forever. The dog stayed with Lily that day. He followed her from room to room quietly. He slept near the door and watched the windows. He trusted the house just as he trusted her. Lily knew the knocking at 5 in the morning was not random. It was a message carried by loyalty and love. The story was not over yet. It was only beginning. The days after the early morning knock passed slowly and quietly. Lily returned to school, but her thoughts stayed with the police dog. Every sound at the door made her look up. Every night she wondered if he was resting well. The dog stayed at the house for a few days. The officers said it was temporary but did not rush him. He slept near the door and watched the street carefully. It felt like he was guarding memories as much as the house. Lily talked to him often even though he never answered. She told him about school and her favorite stories. She told him about her parents who were gone for many years. The dog listened with quiet focus and gentle eyes. Her grandmother noticed the change in Lily. She saw how Lily moved with more care. She saw how Lily spoke softly around the dog. She knew something important had happened. One evening the tall officer returned alone. He stood at the door with his hat in his hands. His face looked tired but kind. The dog recognized him and stood calmly. The officer asked if Lily could come with him to the station. He said there was something she should see. He promised it would be safe and gentle. Her grandmother agreed after a long pause. They walked together as the sun began to set. The dog stayed close to Lily like a shadow. The station building looked quiet and respectful. Lights glowed softly through the windows. Inside the station Lily noticed a table covered with small items. There was a cap and a notebook and a photo frame. The officer explained these belonged to Mark. He said the dog had refused to leave them. Lily stepped closer and looked at the photo. It showed Mark smiling beside the dog. They both looked happy and calm. Lily felt warmth and sadness at the same time. The officer told Lily that Mark used to visit her house often. He said Mark never had a family of his own. He said Mark found comfort in small moments. He said Lily reminded Mark of hope. Lily listened quietly and held the edge of the table. She asked why the dog came to her. The officer thought for a moment before answering. He said the dog followed the strongest memory of safety. He said animals remember feelings more than places. He said the dog remembered laughter and kindness. He said the dog believed Lily could help him understand the loss. The dog sat beside Lily as if agreeing. The officer explained that Mark would not return. He said Mark did his duty with courage. He said his memory would always stay alive. Lily felt her chest tighten, but she stayed strong. She placed her hand on the dog and spoke softly. She told him he did not need to search anymore. She told him Mark would always be remembered. The dog rested his head against her leg. That night the dog returned with Lily again. He slept deeper than before. His breathing sounded calmer. The house felt warmer and less heavy. Days turned into weeks. The dog began training again at the station. But every morning he returned to Lily's house. It became part of his routine. Lily started walking him to school sometimes. People noticed and smiled gently. They whispered stories about loyalty and courage. The dog stayed calm and focused. One afternoon Lily found the notebook Mark had written in. The officer had given it to her with care. Inside were notes about patrols and small thoughts. There were also drawings of a little house. Lily realized that house was hers. Mark had drawn it many times. Beside it, he had written words about peace. Lily closed the notebook with trembling hands. She understood then that the dog was not asking for help. He was delivering something important. He was bringing a message of connection. He was reminding Lily she was never invisible. The dog sat beside her as she read the notebook again. His eyes followed her movements. It felt like he knew she finally understood. The bond between them grew stronger. One evening Lily stood on the porch at sunset. The dog sat beside her quietly. The sky glowed with soft colors. Lily felt calm for the first time in many days. She whispered that they would take care of each other. She promised the dog would always have a home. She promised to remember Mark with kindness. The dog leaned closer as if accepting the promise. The knocking at 5 in the morning was no longer a mystery. It was a call of trust and memory. It was a bridge between loss and healing. And it had changed 2 lives forever. The final weeks of winter passed quietly and gently. The mornings grew brighter and the cold slowly softened. Lily continued her routine with school and home. But life no longer felt empty or silent. The police dog became part of the house. He waited near the door each morning. He followed Lily to the gate and watched her walk away. He always stayed until she turned back to wave. Her grandmother noticed how the dog brought balance. The house felt safer and warmer. Laughter returned in small moments. Even the quiet felt peaceful now. One morning Lily woke before the alarm. She walked to the porch and sat beside the dog. The sun was rising slowly. The world felt calm and open. She spoke to the dog about her dreams. She talked about becoming strong and kind. She talked about helping people one day. The dog listened with steady attention. At the station, the officers noticed a change in the dog. He walked with confidence again. His focus returned during training. But his loyalty to Lily never faded. The tall officer spoke with her grandmother one evening. He explained there was a decision to be made. The dog was ready for a new chapter. But the choice mattered deeply. After many talks and quiet thoughts, the decision became clear. The dog would retire early. He would stay with Lily and her grandmother. The station agreed with respect and pride. The day it became official, the officers visited the house. They brought a small badge and a certificate. They spoke kindly and warmly. They thanked Lily for giving the dog peace. Lily held the certificate with careful hands. She felt proud but humble. She looked at the dog and smiled softly. The dog sat beside her calmly. That night Lily placed the badge beside Mark's notebook. She understood what both meant now. They were symbols of care and duty. They were reminders of connection. Time continued to move forward. Lily grew taller and more confident. The dog grew older but remained strong. Their bond deepened with every season. They walked together through rain and sunshine. They shared quiet mornings and peaceful evenings. The dog watched over Lily faithfully. Lily watched over him with love. Sometimes Lily visited the station with her class. She told the story of the early morning knock. She spoke about loyalty and trust. People listened with quiet respect. The officers smiled when they saw the dog. They said he looked happy and calm. They said he had found his place. Lily knew they were right. Years later Lily stood on the same porch. She was older now and stronger. The dog rested beside her with gray fur. The sky looked just as it did that morning long ago. She remembered the knock at 5. She remembered the fear and the walk. She remembered the loss and the healing. All of it had shaped her heart. Lily leaned down and hugged the dog gently. She thanked him for choosing her. She thanked him for trusting her. The dog rested his head against her shoulder. The street was quiet and peaceful. Life had changed but love had stayed. Some connections are not planned. They arrive when they are needed most. And sometimes a single knock can change everything.